And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Hi there. Hi there, everyone out there in internet land. This is your friend Charlie Hunter. It is Benchley night. It is Sunday. I am home. I am home and no one is watching. That's great. That's great. Except Kate Colors is watching. Hi, Kate. Oh, it is nice to be here. I've just been over at the studio. And what is going on at the studio is that I am packing up paintings to send to Montana. And I always forget how long it takes to pack up paintings because you gotta protect those there paintings because you've worked hard on them. And it takes like an hour and a half to do all the wrapping of the individual paintings and then putting enough padding around them and then cutting a box to the right size. I still have some more to do on that. But anyway, so I came tearing back here and I have a terrible confession to make, ladies and gentlemen. I have a terrible confession to make. I have not gone through the Substack, the people who have paid subscriptions, which is what I'm now asking for, ladies and gentlemen. I am asking, rather than doing weekly fundraisers that Faceplant takes a cut of, I'm asking if people feel like donating to the various liberal snowplowing do-gooder causes of mine, that they do a paid subscription to my email list. And you can do as little as $7 a month, or you can do as much as you want. And I'm not going to flog it a lot more tonight, but if you want your name read off, there's the address to go to toss a few dollars there. But my confession is that I got back in such a rush tonight. I just printed out folks' emails as opposed to their names. So I'm going to just read people's email addresses, not the full address, but the name part, and thank them for being part of the liberal snowplowing do-gooders. And let's get that right out of the way right now, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to give a very, very special thanks to Nancy Rasdick. Oh, that sounded terrible. Let's try the other one. Yeah, that's the one we like better. And I may have to get a new unidentified unglet. These unidentified unglets are kind of wearing out, I think. And Love Hertzy. Thank you, Love Hertzy. And thank you to James Gilbreth. And thank you to Carol Burnham, Susan McNeil, John Wilhelm, Bobcat 4250, C.Me. Baker, D.N. Bass, our dear friend Catherine Fisher, Helen Sisek, Marlon Gibson, Ann Cousins, Gene Fry, Terry Widener, and M.J. Brush 1. And I know out there somewhere in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as his beloved Pirates start spiraling downwards, is my very, very tall cousin. Very, very tall cousin. Here's the email address to go to because you inquired today about how to help. And there's the email address to go to and subscribe and toss a few dollars to liberal snowplowing do-gooders. Thank you, very, very, very tall cousin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's reading is the final chapter in Homer Price by Robert McCloskey. Robert McCloskey lived in Ohio. He grew up in Ohio, and these are kind of generous tall tales that sort of deal with American archetypes, as I wrote in my emailer today. And this is, it's sort of sad to me because what happened to small town America in the second half of the 20th century and the first quarter of the 21st century is tragic. You know, it's small towns don't work as well as they used to. And in the Homer Price stories, things still work pretty well. But this chapter has the foreshadowing of what happened later in America. So this is just going to be the first part tonight. Then I go off to Utah, so I won't be here next week, but then we'll finish it up week after next, okay? Thank you all so much for being here. It is a joy to be able to do this. Wheels of Progress. I can't go fishing today, said Homer, because I'm helping Uncle Ulysses down at the lunchroom. Seems as though the fish ought to be biting on a day like this. You think your Uncle Ulysses could use an extra helper? You think Uncle Ulysses could use an extra helper today, Homer? Because it isn't imperative that I have to go fishing. I just thought if you weren't busy, gosh, Freddie, Uncle Ulysses would like it. He always says the more help, the merrier. But Aunt Aggie is a too many cooks spoil the soup kind of person. And she says she's sick and tired of seeing more people behind the counter than in front of it. Okay, Homer, said Freddie with a sigh. I'll see you tomorrow. Bring me a couple of donuts if you can. When Homer entered the lunchroom, there was Uncle Ulysses puttering with one of his labor-saving devices. Hello, Homer, he said. You're just in time to help me adjust the timing mechanism on this electric toaster. When you want the toast to come out light brown, it comes out nut brown and vice versa. Homer and Uncle Ulysses tinkered with the toaster, and then they tried several pieces of toast. Then they tinkered with the mechanism some more. How's the donut machine working these days, Uncle Ulysses asked Homer. Oh, just fine, said Uncle Ulysses. We're selling more donuts than ever with that new recipe. I suppose you've heard. You've heard about the lady who gave us that old family recipe? The lady who lost her bracelet in the batter? She lives in Centerburg now. She's Naomi Enders, a great-great-great-granddaughter of Ezekiel Enders, the first settler of Centerburg. She inherited all of the Enders property when old Luke Enders died. She owns the mill and the patent medicine company now, and she's living in the big Enders homestead at the edge of town. She stops by for donuts almost every day. One of my best customers, she is. Yep, said Homer. The judge mentioned that she'd come to live in Centerburg. He said that she was a public-spirited person, and she would be an addition to the town. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Robert McCloskey has capitalized each of those words. Public-spirited person and an addition to the town. She appreciates good food, said Uncle Ulysses, eating a piece of nut brown toast. And what's more, she has a receptive mind, receptive to new devices, receptive to new ideas and up-and-coming ideas. A car stopped out front, and Uncle Ulysses peered out and said, well, here she comes now. Homer, better start packing 24 donuts to take out. Good afternoon, said Miss Enders. Hello, Homer. I haven't seen you since the night my bracelet disappeared. That's great. That's great. That's the night the town was overrun with donuts, and she thinks of it as the night her bracelet disappeared. Good afternoon, said Miss Enders. Hello, Homer. I haven't seen you since the night my bracelet disappeared. Hello, Miss Enders, said Homer. How do you like living in Centerburg? Oh, I think it's a marvelous town. Simply marvelous, said Naomi Enders. I've been thinking of what I could do to show my appreciation for the way the people of Centerburg have received me. Everyone has been so kind, simply marvelous. I've just been talking to the judge, and he has informed me that there is a growing housing shortage and that people are having difficulty finding affordable places to live. I have decided that a nice way of showing my appreciation would be to build a few houses on the family property. They could be replicas of the Enders homestead, a sort of monument, and I could rent them reasonably to deserving families. Said Uncle Ulysses, stroking his chin. That's a good idea, Miss Enders. That's a good idea. Homer agreed, and while he counted out 2 dozen doughnuts, he thought of the fun there would be walking rafters and joists in new houses. Uncle Ulysses stopped stroking his chin, and he said, I'll tell you, Miss Enders, it wouldn't do any harm to have more modern houses than the homestead. Of course, said Miss Enders. Modern plumbing. Uncle Ulysses went back to stroking his chin and saying, And modern kitchen appliances, said Miss Enders, as though she knew that would bring instant approval from Uncle Ulysses. Said Uncle Ulysses, and stroked his chin from left to right. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, These are changing times, Miss Enders, and we're living in an age of ideas and production genius. Now take the way they used to make doughnuts, for instance, each one cooked by hand and all that time and bother. Now we have this wonderful machine, makes doughnuts just like that, said Uncle Ulysses, snapping his fingers. Snap, snap, snap. It's marvelous, said Miss Enders. It's simply marvelous. Continued Uncle Ulysses. Now, take the matter of homes. The way they used to build houses. Saw up each board, hammer in nails one at a time, every little shingle and doorknob fastened on by hand. But now, said Uncle Ulysses, with up-and-coming ideas and modern production genius, houses can be built just like this here machine makes doughnuts. And he made a broad sweep with his arm. That's the principle, pronounced Uncle Ulysses, while Miss Enders and Homer gazed in wide-eyed wonder. That's the principle that Henry Ford applied to making automobiles. Yep, automobiles are mass-produced like donuts. Ships are built like donuts, airplanes and refrigerators, and now houses. Yes, sirree, the modern house ought to be mass-produced, just like cars and ships and planes. Yes, sirree, mass-produced, just like that there machine makes donuts. And here Uncle Ulysses snapped his fingers, snap, 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 and said, houses, just like that, snap. He then stopped waving his arms and he then stopped waving his arms and talking and appeared startled that he had talked so much and with such wisdom. He started stroking his chin again while Miss Enders, quite visibly impressed, was murmuring, marvelous, simply marvelous. Homer counted the 2 dozen doughnuts again. Of course, said Uncle Ulysses, it wouldn't be quite as fast or as easy as making doughnuts, but with assembly lines and sub-assembly lines and power presses and a touch of ingenuity, that's your recipe. You can bake a house in 24 hours flat. Snap. Build, corrected Homer. Simply marvelous, said the receptive Miss Enders. Simply marvelous. And here's a picture. Here's a picture of Uncle Ulysses, delighted by his metaphor of house building being like donut making, and Homer looking on, slightly baffled in the background. Homer had heard Uncle Ulysses' pet theories before, and the sheriff and the boys over at the barber shop all had heard Uncle Ulysses carry on about the up-and-coming ideas. In fact, arguing about Uncle Ulysses' pet theories had broken up as many pinochle and checker games as arguing about the World Series or women's suffrage or politics all put together. That was all that ever happened, though, was arguing. But that afternoon in the lunchroom was different. Miss Enders was receptive to Uncle Ulysses' up-and-comingness, and what's more, she had the money to be receptive and up-and-coming with. Almost before the week was up, Miss Enders and the judge, who was her lawyer, and Uncle Ulysses were having conferences. They wrote letters to Detroit, where they have assembly lines and sub-assembly lines in huge presses that can stamp out the whole side of a house just as easy as stamping out the body of a car or a section of a ship. They hired up-and-coming designers and landscape architects, and almost before she knew it, Miss Enders had made arrangements for 100 houses, a whole suburb to be built on the estate around the Enders homestead. As Uncle Ulysses so wisely put it, it don't pay to go to all the trouble of mixing batter and getting the machine hot for 2 or 3 donuts. You might as well make 100 while you're at it. The plans were finally finished and the arrangements all made. The workmen arrived at the Enders estate, and then things really began to happen. The trees were chopped down, the trees were hauled away, the land was leveled by huge tractors, and streets were laid out around the old homestead, all in a day or two. Then power diggers arrived right on schedule and dug one foundation after another. And here's the picture, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the picture of Uncle Ulysses on a stump, gesticulating at the world made new, and Miss Enders enthusiastically holding her hands and gazing along with him, and Homer, hands in pocket, looking somewhat quizzical, looking at the foundations being dug and the homestead all alone now in the center. Homer drove over to the suburb with Uncle Ulysses and Miss Enders to see how things were going. Uncle Ulysses watched the dirt fly and counted as the machines dug foundations. 72, 73, 74. I tell you, my boy, he said to Homer, you are witnessing the beginning of a new era in city planning and housing. 80, 81. Why, tomorrow they'll start to build, and by the end of the week, people will live here. Oh, simply marvelous, exclaimed Miss Enders. Just think, last week there were only grass and trees and squirrels on this spot. Oh, everything happened right on schedule, just as Uncle Ulysses had predicted. Huge trucks and trailers drove along the streets, unloading sub-assembled sides and floors and roofs of houses, all complete to the last window, doorknob, light bulb, and hot and cold water. It was just a matter of an hour or so for the workmen to fasten the sides and the floors together and to put on the roof. And here's a picture, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a picture. Look at that. Look at that. Those houses just coming together, just like donuts down the donut chute. Oh, the walls have fireplaces and pictures already hung. It's perfect, ladies and gentlemen. It's perfect. As the Centerburg newspaper said in an editorial, truly we are witnessing a modern miracle. Little did Ezekiel Enders know when he founded this town 150 years ago that such things as this would come to pass. The Centerburg Bugle is sponsoring a 150 years of Centerburg Progress Week to be celebrated when this new part of town is finished. Judge Shank and Miss Enders are heading the committee and handling the celebration. Anyone wishing to take part in the pageant, please get in touch with the committee or call at the Bugle office. Toward the end of the week, a truckload of mass-produced furniture was moved into every house. Each front yard had its own climbing rose bush, 2 dwarf cedars, and maple trees, all planted and sodded round about. Each backyard had its mass-produced ash can birdhouse, complete with weather vane and revolving clothesline. In fact, modern production genius had thought of everything: sheets, towels, pillowcases, and a print of Whistler's mother over every fireplace. The houses were complete and they were ready to be moved into. They were moved into, too. As you can see, moving in was little more than signing a paper and hanging your hat on the mass-produced hanger on the wall. Uncle Ulysses was very busy these days, attending to last-minute details. The judge and Miss Enders were working frantically on the pageant for 150 years of Centerburg Progress Week. Uncle Ulysses attended to street lights and fire plugs, and one afternoon he met Homer on the street and asked, "Homer, have you seen Dulcie Dooner around lately? I have to make arrangements to have street signs put up in the new suburb. Have you heard, Homer?" he added proudly. "They're going to name one of the streets Ulysses Terrace in honor of me." I think we'll stop there tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's 8:08. I think that's a good stopping place. The construction is complete, and now we're moving into Act 2 of the 150 years of Centerburg Progress Week. We'll see you a week from, not next Sunday, but a week from Sunday. And until then, you take good care. And thank you so much for tuning in. Really enjoyed doing this. Be great. Bye-bye.